Working Man is sponsored by Harmel Academy of the Trades, a residential Catholic trades academy that forms men in their Catholic faith while training them in a high-demand skilled trade. For more information, please visit us at harmelacademy.org. Hi everybody, David Michael Phelps here with another episode of Working Man. Our guest today is Ryan Pohl. Ryan is a machinist, shop teacher, and the owner of Praeco Skills, a company that designs and delivers customized training programs for various industries. He is also the co-founder of Harmel Academy of the Trades. This is a guy with a ton of energy and insight into the challenges faced by working men, what the church has to say about it, and how work, when approached with the right understanding, becomes an occasion for real joy and creativity. In this episode, we talk about the current state of the skilled trades, how the trades slid into something of a crisis, why the trades are making a serious rebound, and Ryan's experience with what he calls his work conversion. It's a story that has to do with a nurse and a boat motor, and you're going to want to listen to it. We recorded this talk in the middle of the coronavirus shutdown. To get a workable signal, Ryan had to phone into the interview from his truck perched on the highest point of his property. So while the audio quality may not be the best, I think you'll find his insights and passion more than make up for it. So without further ado, let's get to Ryan Pohl. Why don't we start by just explaining what it is you do now?
So what I do now, I'm the founder and owner of a company called Praeco Skills. It's a Latin word that means herald or forerunner, and and my wife came up with it because I've been working on this skill crisis in the trades for a long time, for 20 years. At the time, 15 plus years that I was working on this skills crisis. And she says, she goes, you were always the one kind of out front telling people about it, even before it hit. She goes, it kind of just made you a herald of things to come. And then so she looked up the word herald and in Latin, and that was Praeco. So we named it Praeco Skills. And so what I do primarily right now is I help companies build systematic training programs to help develop people in the trades. And primarily in manufacturing, though I've worked in other trades, but it's primarily manufacturing. I go into companies and I help them structure their processes for developing people properly to develop a person so they become an expert in their trade. And that's the primary thing that I do. I still teach apprenticeship classes because I was a shop teacher at one time, so I still teach that, on a kind of a shop by shop basis. But the primary thing is building training programs.
Yeah, so to describe that trades crisis, how would you characterize it?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people now that have a lot of opinions about it, but I like Mike Rowe from former host of Dirty Jobs. He's become a big trades advocate. He kind of coined this term. He's like, as a culture, as a society, we went to war with work. And in this idea of getting dirty and doing work where you had to get dirty or it was a physical sort of form of work, as a culture and a society, we went to war with that. A number of this concept a couple of generations ago, and we basically said, if you have to do any of that sort of work, and you don't go to college, that's bad. And so we sort of just classified it, and there's a lot of evidence to this. We just sort of said, college, white collar jobs where, you don't have to get dirty. Those are the ideal. And then, the trades where you might have to bust your knuckles or whatever, those are bad. And we'd prefer you not have to do that. So what that created was a couple of generations of, parents telling their kids, go to college, because that's where success lies and that's where happiness is and the most money is. And we sort of created this natural gap in our demographics of people that were willing to get their hands dirty and do jobs where they use their bodies, do trades jobs. And, and then, when I was coming into the trade, it was sort of all of my peers were off, college, white collar jobs, and me working in the trades was like, oh, I'm sorry, you lost the game, sort of this mentality. And then I'd look around when I was on my apprenticeship and there was nobody my age. It was all just guys that are older than me. And so I kind of woke up and I realized I'm just like, what's the deal here? How come there's no young people coming into the trades? This is good work. And that kind of just started me down this path.
Why do you suppose that it's considered losing the game? I mean, where does that mentality come from that somehow not going to college or going to the trades is somehow losing some competition?
Yeah, big question. I think it's just sort of human nature in many respects, sort of broadcast on a grand scale in our full society. Yeah, we're humans, if we're not, I don't know how you say it, the collectively the bulk of us, if we're not forced to do something, we tend to take the easy way out. Or if somebody will do something for us, we'll let them. And so this there's conspiracy theories about the college systems wanting to take over and sort of they got really good at marketing and it was sort of intentional. I don't know if I buy that. I more just want to look at history. Historically speaking, man has always tried to pawn off the hard work on other people. And it's always kind of created this class system, or it's often created this class system. And then it goes right back to, honestly, it kind of goes right back to this concept of slavery, too. And my brother-in-law, Dr. Joseph Stewart, out at the University of Mary, he's studied this quite a bit. And, he's written some papers and articles about this. Of why has mankind always tried to take the dirty jobs and somehow, pawn them off on people who they thought were lesser? And so I still think it's just mostly just a manifestation of what we've seen from human nature multiple times in history. Is we try to, as we get comfortable and then we become wealthy, we don't want to have to do, the dirty jobs and anymore. And so we sort of create this two-party system maybe where some people are the haves who can sit back and enjoy their wealth and enjoy their not having to get dirty and smelly, and then you got those that are left doing the rest of the work. Where obviously, from a Catholic perspective, this obviously opens the door to what the truth is. Those are not truthful sentiments. That is not the truth of humanity and the human experience, and you and I both know that. So
yeah, so explain that. What is the sort of alternative or the corrective to that tendency to avoid work, if you can avoid work?
Well, yeah, this is the big thing that I had to go through and experience in my life was, sort of battling with that sort of cultural narrative that work is bad, getting dirty is bad, and then sort of feeling this sort of inner pull where it was like, but I like this work, yet the society is telling me it's bad. And so I had sort of this conflict in me for a lot of years that I just couldn't resolve. And so it put me in this position where, I had a bit of a crisis and going, where am I going to go with my career? This is early in my marriage, early in my career, probably within 5 years of my marriage and career. And my wife and I talked about it a lot. And she sort of opened my eyes to this, my understanding of this Catholic social teaching that hey, there's information out there that the church puts out there that helps us sort of reconcile with the truth, and the reality of it is that we are body, mind, spirit. We're united in all of those things, and the church teaches us that work actually can be good. In fact, it can be a source of an opportunity to work out our redemption and work out our salvation. And so I sort of, dove headfirst into that at that point, and started studying that and started looking at, okay, so this sort of natural feeling that I have inside of me, that sense of satisfaction that I just use my body, my mind, and I just use the machine to cut this perfect plastic injection mold as a machinist, and it's beautiful. And that sense of satisfaction and the kind of the hard work and that I had to put into that, yes, physical at times, and to sit back and go, wow, that was amazing. There's actually a truth there that Catholics and Christians, all Christians should be able to look at and go, that truth is the fact that when we create with our bodies, we are actually co-creating with God. And so we're actually tapping into sort of this reality where we are, raising ourselves up in unity with God when we co-create with Him. And so that's the physical world, and it all goes back to this, commandment, that says subdue the earth, and God inviting us to co-create with Him, not just what we believe as Catholics, children and families, but also in our daily lives, using our bodies to take the material and physical world and co-create it for the betterment of humanity. And so that sort of that twinge in the back of my mind going, well, if this is so bad, why does it make me feel good? That was actually my spirit crying out and saying, this is a good, this is something good, and it's something we can be proud of. And so now my eyes are, after that sort of awakening, it's sort of like, oh, so this is just sort of that human nature that our culture has just sort of said, well, we're gonna, as we do with so many things, we're gonna get distracted from some of these realities, and now that's what we're trying to do, is get people to focus again and say this is actually a good thing, is to be participating and using our bodies, even if it hurts sometimes, even if we smash our knuckles sometimes, to use our body to co-create with God.
Yeah, and it seems to me that sort of error in understanding, thinking that somehow that work is somehow bad or undesirable or to be avoided. I mean, obviously it has more ramifications than just causing confusion in a particular person such as yourself. I mean, it's had some other effects as well economically, yeah. And it's interesting to me how misunderstanding sort of a basic human calling, in this case to work, if you misunderstand it and you denigrate it, it leads to, social problems, economic problems down the line eventually, right? And it's only now that we're seeing those, you might say, economic problems in the form of a shortage of skilled tradesmen, a huge shortage, that now people are open to rethinking something very basic about their lives.
No, you're absolutely right, and people are just starting to feel those effects. And I like again, I'm gonna go back to Mike Rowe, because he said, people are really going to be regretting this mentality when they've got a problem with their toilet and they need a plumber, and there isn't any plumbers. And he said, and those days are coming where you're going to want some essential services, but because we've demeaned work to the point where you're going to have whole cities that have a dozen plumbers, and that's just not enough. And so, from just a very practical standpoint, not having people willing to do work and enjoy it and want to do a good job is going to have social, economic ramifications like it's hard to describe. You're absolutely right about that. So yeah, it is funny. It's one of the beautiful things I enjoy about being Catholic is just, the church can start to point these things out, and it's just so prophetic. This started with Rerum Novarum back with Leo the 13th. He started to point out, look, if we keep going in this certain direction, here are the things that are going to happen, and almost all of them have come true in one form or another.
Let's get to the effects here in a second on the larger scale. But for yourself, as you started to discover some of this, what difference did it make in how you approached your work or in your attitude toward work? I mean, did you see a practical effect when you started looking into this more closely?
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as I stopped being, stopped with this tension and sort of embraced the good of work, all of a sudden it's like the work turned to and my job turned into like a joy, and that joy sort of it triggered this sense of wonder, which triggered this sort of snowball of potential, where you start to you're enjoying it, and wow, I wonder if I can do this now, and it just sort of unfolds this strengthening of your relationship with your creator, and you realize that it's like, as I sort of use my mind and my body, I'm able to sort of see the goodness of God through his creation and through innovation and through new ideas and new techniques, and you just sort of it becomes joyful. It's just like where, yeah, I can't wait to go work on this new project, and even to the point where you start to look at challenges as you become the guy that in the shop that is known for enjoying the challenges, the hardest jobs, and now sort of it sort of by default has sort of this economic impact on the individual, because you sort of have this joy and this almost childlike excitement about the job that you do and facing the challenges that you have. And this is just kind of what I experienced. Now all of a sudden you have all these new ideas and you know, you're enjoying the challenges that you're able to face. And pretty soon it's like, hey, you know, you did a really good job on that. Your boss will start saying to you, you know, how about this opportunity? You know, maybe you'd be good in this new role, or you know, the raises start coming. And it sort of has this, I would call, an unintended financial impact, because I never set out to make more money or anything. I just didn't want to be miserable for 8 to 12 hours a day while I was working. I just wanted to understand why I was working, and sort of the unintended consequences were just opportunities, a new joy. And so, yeah, that was my personal experience. And so that to me was God revealing at another level the truths of this, that many goods come from embracing the truth. And that's what I hope, obviously through Harmel, we're able to get out there, is like, look, embrace the realities of the way we're made, embrace those truths, and sort of the layers and the ripple effect of goodness that God has and blessing that he has in mind for us, and sort of be unlocked through our work. And it flows into families and children, and by that effect, you know, out into communities. And so, you know, that effect of just a snowball, if we can get this going.
So what's kept these insights from sort of getting larger acceptance? Or, I mean, obviously you've moved from, you know, being on the shop floor, and now you're in training, and you know, and you're training trainers, and so obviously you sort of, your career has evolved into helping people, you know, develop their skills better and their understanding of work better, and it's also taken the form too of co-founding, you know, Harmel Academy. But I guess, why isn't there already a Harmel Academy?
Well, there's a lot of reasons to that. One, you know, I hate the analogy of you know, turning a aircraft carrier, but that's our culture. I mean, right now, trying to change culture and turn the thinking to a new way of thinking towards a generation that's very skeptical of older generations is going to take a long time, and it's going to take a long time to get these new thoughts out there. So I guess what I mean by that is, you know, since realizing the magnitude of this skills crisis, you've seen just countless, even at the state level, here locally where we're at, you're seeing so many great initiatives related to, you know, get into the trades. It's a great career, you know, great stability, finances, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we still haven't gotten to that full messaging that ties back to, you know, the why, you know, and you know, how can the trades in this particular work, you know, enrich your life? And I think that's what the next generation is really looking for. Is you know, they're the whole Simon Sinek, you know, start with why generation right now. You know, why am I doing this? How does what we're doing enrich my life and help my neighbor, and, you know, sort of make the world a better place? And so that's what I would encourage. And this is what I encourage everybody, not just people in the Christians, Catholics, people in the work world, in the secular work world. We got to explain why this is good. You know, why the work is good, how it's satisfying, how it can help an individual, you know, feel like a full person, and how can it help the world? And that's going to take a long time of people actually realizing that, for that message to get out there. And so it's a cultural thing. And I think we all know it's, you know, some of the cultural norms have to shift. And like I said, I think I've actually heard young people say, oh, they just want us in the trades because, you know, they need us right now, and then there's nothing in it for me. You know, they're just scared because we won't be able to do those jobs and blah, blah, blah. So they're skeptical of the older generations, and perhaps rightfully so. that's why we need to do a good job of selling on no, this is actually rewarding work. And so you're going to feel good at the end of the day because you created something. And from a Christian perspective, you can look at it and go, I just enriched my life with God because I co-created with him. And then there's going to be good financial benefits, but you are literally working in the trades. You are literally building homes for people. You are helping create systems that like here now we're in the coronavirus stuff. Somebody is making that PPE for the doctors and the nurses, those heroes at the front line. There's other heroes behind the scenes who are making that equipment to help keep them safe, making the ventilators. These machines. There's this big system where all of these material goods. Everybody wants an ambulance to show up at their door if there's a medical crisis, but and we rightfully praise the paramedics and the medical staff. But who made the ambulance? It's like there's this sort of this larger message that goes up that those are important things too. It's not just the one who's right there at the front line, but it's the people who are supporting those people. That once we start getting that message out there, that those are just as important too. To society and helping humanity, and people start to embrace that. That's, in my opinion, when this message will really start to resonate with people, is how important, not just from a financial standpoint, but a truly enriching, helping your neighbor, changing the world sort of jobs that these are.
No, that's right. I mean, without some sort of moral backing to understanding the worth of work, these young men are just going to see this as, oh, you're just doing some sort of financial calculus, and
Exactly.
I'm some sort of tool that you need. And the more that we're in the habit of just reducing things down to a matter of a financial calculus, that skepticism is going to remain. And
Absolutely.
Without recovering literally some sort of moral foundation for understanding what work is, which means some sort of other focused societal view of the value of work and the contribution that an individual human person makes into making things better for the world. Without that minimum moral framework, you're not going to be able to get people to understand why they should work, and therefore why this is a good thing for them to work. And then, of course, I mean, you bring the gospel into all of that, of course, which is, it's so much more, but it's the moral system of excellence, right? That's really the only thing that actually snaps it into place, that really snaps it into place, not only intellectually in someone's understanding, but practically in how they live their lives. So I think that's exactly right. I mean, we've not only degraded work, but we've removed from people's habits of mind the way of even understanding the meaningfulness of work. So asking them to see it as meaningful without the tools, without the ethical tools to understand what is meaningful, well, of course they're going to remain skeptical, obviously. So that describes the problem, right? So tell me a little bit about how you came to think through what eventually became Harmel Academy.
The story a little bit behind Harmel Academy, it's somewhat of a personal story, right? I don't want to over dramatize things, but it is, it's interesting. It's interesting of how God works. And so I was going through this. I've now referred to it often as my work conversion. I kind of went from being a guy who was at war with my call to work, and I didn't understand it. And I kind of talked about that earlier. And I had to get to this place where, look, I'm a young father, I'm a young husband, and I'm looking at the next 40 years of my life likely that I need to come to terms with this idea of work and what I'm going to do. And so after my wife and I started reading just little bits of Catholic social teaching and starting to understand and praying and discussing this, I started to think, just kicking around in the back of my head, I started to embrace this. I enjoy the challenge of fixing things and working on things. And at the time when we started, I was remodeling my house from top to bottom, and I went from this being at the beginning, I was like, oh, what a chore this is going to be. I just need to make the money that's associated with this. To literally over the couple of years, because it was a major job. In that time, I sort of had my work conversion. and it was from the start. Quite honestly, it was like things down, just kind of slapping it together. By the end of it, the projects I was working on, I'm trying to do the very best that I can, because now I understand work at a different level. And so it was interesting. I'm going through this whole process while I'm remodeling the house and still kind of being a teacher and working as a machinist. But all of these thoughts are kicking around in my head. And so it came a time where I was in my garage. I'm working on my boat motor. We were just up north, and I blew up my boat motor, and and it was a little 15-horse Johnson, and I've got this thing ripped apart. I've struggled with it. My hands are greasy and dirty and bloody, and I'm having a blast. I got some music going, and I'm loving the job. I'm loving the process and the challenge and trying to figure this thing out. How am I going to fix this thing? And it just kind of, I stopped, and I just had a moment with the Lord, and I just said, thank you, Lord, for this, and for just this peaceful, getting me to a place where I'm now at peace with this type of thing. And it just felt good. And I just sort of had this sort of brief, wow, what brought me here? How did I get here? And I started thinking about, my wife's education. And my wife is a nurse, and she did part of her education down at the University of Steubenville, Catholic College. And when she was faced with my question about work, she had an answer. And she said, well, I know about Catholic social teaching. And she had learned about this down at Steubenville. And I was kind of all in one thought. I'm like, why did she have access to that information and I didn't? Why was there a school that she could go get educated as a nurse or, a doctor or a teacher or something like that, and get that sort of Catholic school or that Catholic foundation of philosophy and theology and how to think in that way? And there was no place for me as a machinist to get that same formation. And I literally, in one of those few times in your life where you feel like God speaks to you a little bit, and I'm going through all this thought process, and I said, why doesn't that type of school exist? And I just sort of feel in my heart and in my mind, because you haven't started one yet. And so it's just those are the words that I felt, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm crazy. So I literally that's a nice idea. It never went away, but I tabled it, right? Because I'm not in a position to start a Catholic trade school or, a place where we can do this thing that went through my mind. No way. And so years go by, and, I was friends with President Brian Black. We were family friends, and I would talk to him because he worked in the trades as well. And we would talk about it. And he said, wow, yeah, that is definitely something that has to happen. And we talked about it in different forms and variations for years. And long story short, my career changed. I followed different paths. And I ended up in a position where it's like, maybe now is a good time. I'll have some more freedom and flexibility. And we talked, I guess we're approaching probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And talked to President Black, and we kicked this thing off. And the credit goes to God, because the idea is obviously originally his, but he's also put the right people in the right place at the right time. And I continue to run my business. And as president, now I'm president of the board of advisors, obviously, not full-time working on Harmel Academy, but Brian Black being in a position where he could do that. And now it's just been amazing to see the way God has put those people in place. And now here we have it. We have Harmel Academy. And maybe that's more information or whatever than we wanted, but there it is. That's how we got here.
Hey gang, just a quick interruption to tell you just a little bit about Harmel Academy of the Trades. Harmel Academy of the Trades exists to form the whole man, providing him not only with the skills necessary to meet the widespread need for tradesmen, but also the intellectual, spiritual, and moral strength that allows him to work with excellence. Our inaugural program, Machine and Systems Technology, starts this fall, and we're now accepting applications. Harmel's unique residential program, located in Grand Rapids, Michigan, is like none other. Young men live, pray, work, and eat in community, receive hands-on training in machine technology, and encounter the spiritual and intellectual wealth the Catholic Church has to offer on true human development. They're a humanities curriculum customized for the working man. You can think of it like history and philosophy for guys who like to blow things up. So if you want to be trained in a high-demand skilled trade while being formed in your Catholic faith, or if you know a young man who'd be interested in building such a future in the trades, I encourage you to check us out at harmelacademy.org. Applications are now being accepted, so check us out soon. Now, back to the interview. When do you think people started to see the need that we better be paying attention to the trades? Is it a generational thing when a certain generation just started retiring and realizing there's no one else filling that need? I mean, what kicked it off in people's minds that we better start paying attention to how we're training tradesmen?
Yeah, I definitely think it's primarily right now driven by the demographics of all of these people leaving the trades and very few people coming into the trades, and so this became a demographic and an economic issue where they started going, look, the trades make up something like 27% of our economy, and we are, and that does not include all of the jobs that are dependent on the trades. They economically, they started doing the math and they're going, look, if that 7% is even cut in half, that's going to affect any other number of percentage of the economy, and this is going to have a massive ripple effect. And so people just started rightfully doing the math.
So what would you say? I mean, you work with a lot of guys in the trades. What do you see, especially the young guys coming into the trades? What do you see that they most need to be successful there?
This is speaking fairly bluntly. They need to see a path of stability. They need to see a career. They need to see that they can make a career, not just a job. I see too many people coming into the trades because just a paycheck. We want people that are coming into the trade because they understand it as a career and as a vocation. And so maybe that's a little too abstract to say, but I believe that the people coming into the trades need to see it as a career, as something they can invest their lives into and feel good about. And that's obviously going to mean all those support systems. That means training is number one. Training is number one. Respect, appreciation for the work that they're doing. So I know that's very sort of abstract again and a little nebulous in the answer. That's the right word, but it's like, to me, it's like we have to get people who want to be there and who are not there necessarily because they failed at something else. I don't want people to be in the trades because it was their second or third or fourth option, or what they couldn't do something else, therefore they are now working in the trades. No, I want it to be their first option. I want people to see that this is a good option, a great option, and that they can feel good about it, and they can make a difference there, and their lives will be enriched there. And so I don't, I think places like Harmel, and it's not just Harmel. I think it's all schools should be preaching this. There is a moral good that comes from this, whether it's a secular school or not. This is good for the common good of our society, and people need to know that this is a first option, excellent choice, and that needs to spread throughout of our society, in my opinion. That's what they need. You need to get the best of the best.
So it seems to me like part of the problem there is if a young man needs to be able to come into this and see this as a career, and not being able to do that is a problem for him, both his own development and his effectiveness in the job. It seems to me that training is one thing, but there's a certain, maybe we'll say, failure of imagination, right? And what I mean by that is, a couple of years ago, I did some work with another type of mentoring team, and the leader of that group said that one day, one of the young men he was mentoring said to him, "Hey, how can I become something I can't see?" And the point was, if I can't see what this life looks like, if I can't see what this type of moral strength looks like, how am I going to be able to achieve that? Do you think that there's work that needs to be done to help people be able to, imagine or visualize what that good life looks like? And if so, how do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I to my clients in manufacturing, I call that career pathing, right? Present a career path and show it to the young people coming in the trade so that they can start to formulate in their mind what success looks like. And to me, that's okay. You're talking about a guy that creates systematic training system programs. To me, that means measurable, tangible objectives over a period of years that are met with not only the things that they're expected to do as an individual who is learning and growing, but what the company and the general industry is going to be expected to do to sort of support them on their path. And so it means planning, having a process. To me, the development of people in the trades is always a 3-pillar system. It's people, the process, and then persistence. And so being able to, understand that this is a people situation. You're always going to be dealing with people who are dynamic. They change. They're going to have different needs. And so we have to understand that. You're going to need a process that helps people imagine, like, to use your term, that sort of imagination where they can see themselves fitting into a process that they can already talk to somebody within a company or within a trade or an industry that is 10 years ahead of them, and they can see how they got there, or 20 years or 30 or 40 years ahead of where they are, so they can start to identify themselves with other people, and they can see how the process works to get that other individual there, so they can start to see how they're going to get there. And then that persistence. Just training and development is paramount. They are the foundation to the trade. The people are that foundation, and so we can't ever take our eye off the ball. It has to be built into our culture that training isn't just what we do when we have time, or it's not a necessary evil. It is absolutely an essential component to the development of the most important aspect of the industry itself. And so, there's all kinds of cultural things that have happened that have, made these difficult things for people to embrace. But to me, those are the 3 things that'll help people envision themselves in a long-term career. Is keeping a focus on all of our strategies revolve around those 3 things.
So let me add one more thing onto that then. What does something like that look like, which also keeps in mind, you might say, the spiritual development? I mean, do you have models that you've looked to of almost like spiritual career pathing or growth and holiness? Are there certain models that would help someone imagine what does it look like to be this sort of man who approaches his work in this sort of way with this type of excellence and intentionality, but also at the same time is able to contextualize that in the spiritual life? Who do you look to?
I think there's a lot of development there that has to happen. And I mean, there's some great initiatives out there, great groups out there that sort of, from my understanding, have done it in sort of a monastic sense or a maybe a general layperson sense. I'm thinking of Saint Jose Maria Escriva. I'm thinking of the Benedictine Rule. All of these types of things. These people have got us given us as examples of how to integrate holiness into your work. But there are some modern challenges that are going to have to be worked out with this. And how do we work out our spirituality and develop our spirituality as we develop in a trade? And how do we sort of, project that onto the work that we do and around the people that we are working on? Because that's really the great call, is so that to preach the gospel always, and if necessary, use words, right? Where somebody sees us doing our job and they go, wow, I got to be like that. What is that person's secret? And they come to find out that it's Christians, and look at the way that we did that job. And so I expect, as a co-founder of Harmel Academy, I expect a lot of this thought, a lot of these examples to be coming from our students, to be coming from our graduates and the people affiliated with the academy. And that's the expectation. And that's the exciting part about being part of something that is new like this. And, it's my invitation to any young man or a parent or whoever that hears this is that's what we're working on, is that holistic approach to the whole person, of not just being a great tradesperson, but also learning to develop your relationship with Christ through your work and through the people you encounter in your work, and the sort of opportunities to just be at the cutting edge, if you will, of, I think, what the church has put in place for us, over 100 years ago, is we're finally at this place where we get to start unlocking some of these truths. And so I'm looking to Harmel Academy. No pressure.
Yeah, excellent. Good. Yeah, well, there is something to be said for sure about this, because a lot of attempts that I've seen that come at it sort of sideways is it's almost like they try to, sprinkle some Jesus on work. And I'm excited about the approach where things are integrated, right? Much more intimately than that, where it's not as if over here on this side, you learn a skill or a trade or whatever that, and then over on that side, we teach you how to evangelize at work or something like that. Whereas where the two of them are actually integrated into one another, and that your excellence as a working man and your excellence as a son of God are seen to be two sides of the same coin, as opposed to things that are linked together later.
So I just did Father Calloway's consecration to St. Joseph, and there's a story in there that he shares about the miraculous staircase in New Mexico. Have you heard of this story?
Oh yeah, but please tell it again. It's excellent.
Yeah. So the story goes, and I'm going to get it wrong, so I apologize. Get the book, do the consecration. To anybody that hasn't, it's great. But the story goes like this: there were some nuns who had a chapel built, and they had a loft or something built to this chapel, but they ran out of space, or there was a design issue, or they ran out of space to have a set of stairs put in, and they couldn't afford it anymore. So these nuns prayed to St. Joseph, being the carpenter, and that he would send somebody that could build a staircase that they could afford, and it would be functional for this chapel. Well, out of the blue, after finishing a novena to St. Joseph, out of the blue, this stranger comes by, and this is in New Mexico. The stranger comes by and says, "I'll build you your staircase." And they call it a miraculous staircase because these nuns believe that it was St. Joseph himself built this amazing spiral staircase with no center support beam, all self-supporting, and with zero steel nails, all wood pegs, and it's all self-supporting, and it's just one of the most beautiful and unexplainable pieces of craftsmanship that you could possibly imagine. And so let's assume that the Lord did that miracle, and that it was St. Joseph that built this staircase. And I think that presents a perfect model for us to enter into this spirituality, because here's St. Joseph, the man that was entrusted with the raising of our Lord and Savior. And let's just say it was him that created this, and we're going to believe this, and it was him that created this staircase. What does that staircase tell us about how we are supposed to raise our game and our spirituality in all of the work that we do? He created a masterpiece, something that would be almost impossible to replicate, and the beauty is beyond anything. And it's like, and I think he gives us the example then of what our goal is that to find in our physical work and in our physical body a way to express our spirituality through creating masterpieces. And that's exciting. And I think that provides a perfect example of what we're trying to do.
That's exactly right.
And we're so excited, about what's happening with Harmel. We think it's going to be fantastic. But thank you for this opportunity, David, to have this conversation. It's been excellent.
Thank you for taking the time. We'll talk again soon, man.
All right. God bless you.
Hey, thanks everyone for listening. If you're interested in the book Ryan referenced, Father Calloway's Consecration to St. Joseph, please see the show notes. Also, if you or someone you know is interested in the sort of conversations we're looking to host here at Harmel Academy, conversations about the meaning of human work, what it means to be a Catholic man, or even how to rebuild a Johnson 15 horsepower outboard motor, I hope you'll reach out to us. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or at harmelacademy.org. Hope to hear from you soon.